Before we begin, as always, I'm able to get a rough idea about these translations myself by using the Google Translate app, but videos like this would not exist without the hard work of fan translators such as Charam, Everglow, and Goldpanner. Please check them out at their respective links in the description. Thanks again, let's get started. It's been 4 months, but when we left off, Maleficent and very possibly Darkness had just knocked Lauriam unconscious and hopped in the rightmost pod from the Data Daybreak Town tower. Maleficent now emerges from the pod back into the real Daybreak Town, in a room that looks identical to its Data counterpart, well, except for the battle scars. She initially wonders if she is back in her own time, and grows frustrated with Darkness when it reveals that she is indeed still in the past. To return where Maleficent belongs, the witch will again have to board the pod, but this time its destination will be for the past. Maleficent wonders if Darkness will be accompanying her, and seeing as it doesn't have a body of its own, Maleficent proposes that she could share hers, but Darkness remarks that Maleficent has more than enough darkness of her own, and that it still has its own business to attend to. So Maleficent has made it back into the real world, and is about to undertake her journey through time, to place herself back at the beginning of Kingdom Hearts 2. It's interesting that she took a pod from the Data world, leaving only 5 left that could possibly be used to escape from it, but of course in the real world there wasn't a battle, and therefore there are 7 working pods ready to transport their occupants through time. I imagine we'll see Lauriam soon, and he will reveal what happened in this room, giving Brain an idea for how to get everybody out. I honestly wonder how many of the dandelions will be trapped in the Data world, or if the Union leaders will be able to figure out how to control the pods from the real world side and get all of them out. I have to assume that if a pod travels through time, then that will be a one-way trip for the pod though. It's interesting that the pods seem to have a starting point and a destination though, and though travelling through time wasn't their original purpose, I wonder if anyone that travels through time will end up in a similar looking machine, say the one in Radiant Garden for example. The very same one we're about to see in Melody of Memory. Wouldn't it be crazy if Kari had memories of, say, Skald's arrival, as she was about to be launched to Destiny Islands? We now join Skald, Ephema, and Brain, who are still dealing with the fallout of the revelations about Ventus and Strelitzia. If you'll recall, Brain brought the group together and revealed to them that Strelitzia was indeed intended to be a Union leader, but for some reason Ven was in her place. He rationalized that if the Dandelion's plan was to ensure that the light survived, that if something was actively going against that plan, then they may well be a creature of darkness, and insisted that Ven rack his memories for clues as to what may have happened. It seems that initial shock of trying to remember took a toll on Ven's mind though, and the boy has been asleep for a little while since. Skald asks Brain if Ven is a victim of the plot as well, and surmises that Brain has been trying to figure out some of the mysteries himself. She asks him to tell the group what he knows. From Ven's account, Brain believes that Ven was there at the moment Strelitzia disappeared, but wonders who could have schemed for such a thing to happen. Skald isn't sure, but Ephema answers, well, Darkness. Brain seems to agree, and believes that this hypothetical agent of darkness has been even closer than they realized, and their plan seems to be in motion. In his bed, Ven dreams of a scene we have seen many times before. Strelitzia enters that abandoned room, looking for our character to try and spare us from the impending war. She enters, and slowly steps inside, but this time, we finally get the full picture. As we know, Ventus had already walked into the room, searching for Master Ava. He turns and takes a step towards Strelitzia, and we can see that he is completely shrouded in darkness, his eyes clouded over. As Strelitzia turns to face the source of the disturbance, the darkness that surrounds Ven violently lashes out, and fatally strikes Strelitzia, knocking both her and her Chirithie to the ground. It then commands Ven to pick up the book that she dropped, and unfazed, unblinkingly, Ven obeys the voice's commands. It then instructs Ven to follow as it makes its way to the exit, and separates itself from the possessed boy, who walks past the motionless bodies of Strelitzia and her Chirithie. As Ven steps past her, Strelitzia calls out one last time to her brother. As the dark figure is touched by the daylight shining in from outside, it takes on the appearance of Master Ava, and the shock is enough to jolt Ven awake from his slumber, with tears rolling down his eyes. This is confirmation for anyone that somehow still missed it. No, Ven did not kill Strelitzia. Darkness possessed him, likely manipulating whatever small amount of natural darkness the boy had inside him to force him to do Darkness's bidding. We have seen this demonstrated throughout the series already. For example, Maleficent manipulated Terra's darkness to capture Aurora's heart and drive him even further away from his home and Ericus. Up until now, Ven's memory of that day went as such. He was invited to this room to meet Master Ava. Then he saw a girl enter the room. Then his memory went fuzzy, and then he remembered walking outside with Ava and conversing with her as they reached the clock tower, where she invited him to become a union leader. The shock of what truly happened likely caused Ven to repress the true memories that were already being obscured by darkness, and he was content with assuming that it was Ava that entered the room. But with prompting from his friends, he was able to bring the truth to the surface. The poor boy will likely harbor a ton of guilt about this, despite being an innocent victim, but ironically, somewhat luckily for him, he will soon lose all of these memories anyway, along with everything else he currently knows about this time as he is sent to the future. Darkness commanded Ven to pick up the book, which is Ven's ticket to convincingly appearing as a new union leader. I'm happy to be wrong about this, but my theory is that Darkness thought Strelitzia would be carrying the Book of Prophecies, not just the union leader's rulebook. Darkness transforming into Ava sets an interesting precedent. It doesn't mean that Ava has been Darkness this entire time, or that, Ava somehow is actually the being we know as Darkness, though I suppose it is possible. But I'm sure it only took that form so that Ven would have convincing memories of Ava inviting him to become a union leader. But it does mean that Darkness has the ability to take on the form of others, as, ironically, Ava herself demonstrated earlier. I suppose this means that we can't rule out the idea that Darkness has taken on the appearance of others already, including Ava herself, but if I am right in my theory, the Darkness was literally just released from the Dark Chirithy moments earlier, then it wouldn't have actually had the opportunity to appear as anyone else during any other time prior to this moment yet. It could potentially appear as someone else in the future though, so we'll have to keep that in mind. Though interestingly, it seemingly never even bothered with Maleficent. I guess it correctly realized that she would happily put her trust in a sentient cloud of darkness. We see another conversation held between the Master of Masters and Luxu. Judging by some interpretations of this conversation, I would assume that it is happening slightly before Luxu was given his role and the Master's Keyblade, far before the war itself. Though based on the position of the two in the room, and the room itself, it could take place very soon after the Cornerstones of Light cutscene. Luxu was pacing around the room and sighing, prompting the Master to address his frustrated pupil. Luxu was clearly bothered by the Master's plan. The Master told him that you cannot erase darkness, and that the world's destruction is inevitable, so Luxu fears that the battle against the darkness is ultimately going to be unwinnable. The Master asks Luxu if he is bothered by that, and Luxu implores the Master that as a Keyblade wielder, it is his duty to fight and defeat the darkness, but he can't believe that there is no hope of defeating it, and that all they can do is run. The Master indulges Luxu, and admits that if they were truly just running, then that would be pretty disgraceful, right? Luxu prods further. Even if they escape to a new world, that's still just running away, right? The Master approaches his young pupil. He seems disappointed that after all the Master's teachings, Luxu still seems to understand so little. Luxu was thinking too far ahead and overcomplicating things, worrying about the outcome before it even happens. Luxu's getting all worked up over an outcome he has convinced himself will happen, when he doesn't even have all the information yet, and has simply written off what he doesn't understand as not actually having an answer. But the Master says that Luxu will get his answers eventually. The young wielder asks the Master if he just has to wait for the outcome, and the Master answers that if he keeps stepping forward, he will reach his destination one day. But Luxu impatiently sighs again, annoying the Master. Luxu explains that he can't just wait forever if he has no idea how long he's even supposed to wait for. The Master counters, "Oh, so you'd rather live your life knowing exactly how it's going to play out?" And Luxu timidly replies that that's not what he meant. The Master turns away and reveals that there is a way to defeat the darkness, completely taking Luxu off guard. But the Master continues that it will take a lot of work, a lot of time, many lifetimes worth even. That's why they must leave this world behind. End it. Cast away time and the boundaries of the world itself. Whatever it takes to defeat the darkness. So I'm just going to drop a link to a video that I put out last week here, where I laid out the blueprints for a theory that the Master of Masters is going to ridiculous lengths to ensure that the light side ends up ultimately winning the battle, even though the light will suffer heavy casualties along the way. I don't think anything that was said here disproves those theories, so I'm pretty relieved about that. It seems that we are seeing a Luxu here that is still not fully convinced of the Master's plan, unlike the true believer we will see later on, which I'd say is fair enough. The Master is proposing that he allows the world to be destroyed, and that one day this may pay off for the light side. I'd say Luxu is within his rights to experience some wavering in his faith in the Master. The Master says he is going to throw off the boundaries of time and the world itself, which really screams to me that he is leaving this universe entirely, which is perfect, as it basically lines up with what we've already seen. The Master will seemingly abandon this world to perish, and spend his time beyond the current world's boundaries, likely in a place where time moves much slower, if time even affects the Master at all. Overall, a very solid update, confirming some things we already knew and setting the stage further for the final acts in the story. Hopefully we'll get some more important story updates next month. Wreck-It Ralph seems to be getting closer and closer to being wrapped up, and when that happens, I imagine it's just going to be all important plot points from there until the finale. I honestly can't wait. Thanks again for your support, guys. I'll see you really soon. Take care. Bye bye.